Hello, in this video, I'll be talking about 15 homeschooling cons. Con number 1, you will stumble on subjects that you have no experience in or, feel overwhelmed in teaching it. For example, like grade 9 to 12, biology, chemistry, and math and physics. And, you can either do three things. You can send them to community college classes, you can make them take online courses, or you can force them to learn these things on their own, which is what happened to me, which was fine because I learned how to learn things on my own. But from my research in doing this video, I read that a lot of homeschooling kids did not enjoy the unstructured and the uncertainty of learning these subjects. Here is a quote from Reddit from a user that has been deleted. He says, "This brings me to the next problem, what I call the homeschooling STEM ceiling. Around middle school, children should begin to learn advanced math concepts. However, due to mathematics being a notoriously difficult subject to both teach and learn, parents of preteens and teens are blindsided by how difficult mathematics is as a subject. What happened in my case, and in many cases I've seen, is a family begins homeschooling at a young age, and everything goes well until higher level math and science concepts enter the curriculum. Homeschooling parents simply give up on the STEM subjects and push reading and writing. In the end, the child suffers from an educational deficit while their advanced writing and reading skills mask a profound disservice." I believe this user because their writing is super strong. For a post on Reddit. I've seen this a couple times in my research where parents will homeschool till kindergarten to grade 8 and then send their kids off to grade 9 and 12. And that depends on you, You can think of it in a positive view, whereas oh, okay, I'll homeschool my child from kindergarten to grade 8 and lay the foundations of their learning and education and send them to high school after that, where they'll be more prepared. You can also think of it as a con in that you want to avoid sending your child to public school anyway, but if eventually I will have to send them to school because I'm overwhelmed or can't afford, sending them to community college classes or doing an online course, then I might as well do public school from the beginning, since I'll have to send them anyway in high school. So there's two ways to look at this con. In the end, I think it is a child by child basis. If your child has the ability to learn on their own, or you're able to teach your child to learn how to learn on their own, then this con will definitely be less of a con. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. I have my almost 6-month-old here with me. She was playing right in the front of me, and she wanted to come sit up with me. So con number 2 is that if you do not provide opportunities for your child to socialize, then they will become antisocial, especially if you live in a rural area, very far from other people, and you don't necessarily live in a suburban area where your kids can, go out in the afternoons and see other children playing. And in North America, I grew up in Indonesia, where you would see a lot of kids playing outside in the afternoons. I'm not sure if that's the case anymore now that all kids have phones, but in Canada, I don't see that many kids going out in the afternoons to play on weekdays or even the weekends. And what I mean by provide opportunities for your child to socialize, I mean like sports, or art classes, or there's things called homeschooling co-ops, or getting together with other homeschooling groups in your community. And if you just keep them home all the time, and they will not have the socialization skills of if they were to go to public school. Okay, I'm going to read this quote from Reddit from user 1001 Geese. "Your location matters. If you live in a state that is supportive of homeschooling and you're a town with active groups, you are golden. If you live in the middle of nowhere, or you have to travel an hour to go to gymnastics or the library, plan to spend a lot of time in the car if you want to do the things that other homeschoolers do. Likewise, if you are in an area that everyone homeschools for religious reasons, but you are secular, you may not find any groups of people willing to socialize with your kids." Now, this may not necessarily be a con if your child has siblings, like you have more than one child, because I do think that a lot of the skills of socialization can be learned from siblings. But I think once the child gets older and older, the ability to talk to other people, I guess regardless of if they're the same age or not, is very important. On number 3, you will have difficulties in getting your child to listen to you. You are the parent before you are the teacher, and your child loves you, and you love your child, and they are, the most comfortable with you than they would be, with a teacher in a classroom surrounded by their peers. So if you're planning to homeschool, expect a lot of whining, complaining, be ready to discipline your children, or, have discipline in your home. Prepare to have incentives for your children to do their homeschooling work, such as no playing video games or no playing outside until your homeschool is done. Con number 4, you will face burnout. Those who are excited about homeschooling may not realize the amount of work that can go into it. There's so much planning and preparation and researching, especially as your children get older. Then eventually you have to actually do the teaching. It is like being a parent, I'm going to talk about moms. Being a mom is a full-time job. Adding homeschooling to the mix is like you have 2 full-time jobs. Homeschooling is a lot of work, and the return on investment is not seen right away. It'll take years and years and years before you see, wow, I guess homeschooling was a right choice for my family, my children. Con number 5, you are with your kids all day long. Here's a quote from user Tandabat. I tell people the best thing about homeschooling is being able to spend so much time with my kids. And the worst thing about homeschooling is spending so much time with my kids. I don't think there's much to say about this one, except if you don't like your kids, send them to school. I'm just kidding. The truth is that as people, we need to take breaks. And anything that we do, we need to take breaks. We need to recharge. In the corporate world, people have 2-hour meetings, but there's a half-hour break in between these meetings. In the reality of homeschooling, you would not get a break like you would if you would send your children to school. Following on that, con number 6 is that it can be exhausting. Here's a quote from Agreeable Deer from a Reddit thread titled "Homeschooling is Hard." She says, "I'm exhausted, my house is a mess, and I'm trying to keep trucking along. Being the social schedule for a child is exhausting. Making sure a kid is learning is exhausting, and hoping you are not failing your child is also exhausting." It can be mentally and physically hard to be juggling all these things. And if your child is in school, you wouldn't have to worry about the education part. Con number 7, you probably can't homeschool if both parents need to be working full time. Now, I've seen in Facebook groups where both the parents are working and they do also homeschool, so I know that it is possible. But the reality is, the con that I mentioned earlier, where being a homeschooling parent is like having another full-time job on top of being a parent. So it does take a lot of time, and I imagine that the people that do homeschool their children while working full time, they get burnout, or they may not have the time to make the homeschooling experience like they want. Hello, what do you have to say? Con number 8, you will get judged a lot. The homeschool stigma is real. People have so many questions, they have so many judgments against it, and it can be hard justifying over and over, why are you homeschooling your kids? And how will they make friends? And they're going to high school, right? And how can you stand being with them all day long? For example, okay, homeschooling con number 9 is that it takes up a lot of your time. Researching curriculums, understanding how to teach something, and preparing the materials, and doing the actual teaching, it takes a lot of time. And you wouldn't be doing all these things if you would send your kids to school. Con number 10, there are so many distractions at home. TV, toys, video games, and when your child is trying to do their work, on the dining room table, and they can't focus because they can't wait to play with their toys or play with their baby sister or X, Y, and Z. It can be hard to tell your child to focus on their work. Con number 11, if you are planning to homeschool your children as an excuse to put more responsibilities on them where they have virtually no time to learn, especially the basics like reading, writing, and math, then you are disservicing your child. Every child has a right to an education. That's why schools are free. And every child should be able to read, write, and do, I would say, basic math like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And I've seen, adults in Indonesia where their parents put them to work at a young age and didn't send them to school. And as adults, they can't read and write, and they're embarrassed when they go to the markets, for example. This can go the other way, where you homeschool your child, but you let them play video games all day or sit in front of the TV all day. It is much, much better to send them to school. Don't get me wrong, like you can learn so many skills and have discipline when you are working on a farm, a family farm. But I think if you are not providing time in a child's day or week to learn the basics, then you're not doing your child any favors. Let's say that child doesn't want to work on the farm in the future and they want to become a doctor or a lawyer. Then by limiting them in this way for the benefit of homeschooling, like you're homeschooling your child, and in this way, you're putting your child at a disadvantage. So con number 12 is that it can be expensive. I'm thinking of buying this Saxon math curriculum bundle for like the later grades, and it's $300 like brand new. Buy materials and textbooks and books, it can be more expensive, and I think depending on where you live, you won't get any assistance from the government. So that is something to consider if you are planning to homeschool. But I do believe, especially if you live somewhere where there are libraries, the cost can be super, like, not as expensive. I was such a big reader as a kid, and if I had grown up somewhere where there are libraries, I think I would have benefited from that a lot. But I'm going to make another video about the things that I regret from being homeschooled. So subscribe if you want to catch that video. Con number 3 is that your house will be in a perpetual mess all the time, especially if you are a stay-at-home mom where you have the ability to clean your house while your kids are at school. If you're a mother that works, your house will be messy anyway, whether you homeschool or go to work. So con number 14, if you are homeschooling in countries like Indonesia, I don't know any other country. I know it's illegal to homeschool in Germany, but in Indonesia, if you homeschool there, then it is extremely hard to go to university. Like, as an Indonesian who is homeschooling their child, then prepare to not be able to apply to universities there, which is what happened in my case. Universities there want to see a high school diploma, like a real one. And in order to get a high school diploma in Indonesia, you need to have a diploma from the previous grades. So con number 15, you will second guess yourself. You're listening to everyone judge you, and your kid might not be learning that well. Your kids are just not listening to you, which makes it impossible to teach them. If you're placing high standards for yourself as, a homeschooling parent, and you are just pouring your heart and your time in order to give your children the best homeschooling experience, and you're wondering if homeschooling is worth it, then the chances are, if you are this type of parent, then your kids are probably enjoying homeschooling. And if you ask them if they want to go to school, they probably say no. If you are second guessing yourself and you are, this type of parent that pours so much love and time and research into giving your children the best homeschooling experience, then this feeling, it'll eventually pass, and you have to be more confident. But if you are a struggling homeschooling parent, and you are second guessing yourself, and you are struggling teaching your children, and you are yelling at them, and you just let them use like play video games all day, then I don't think homeschooling is right for you at this specific time in your child's life. Even if you think that excessive screen time, like with the excessive screen time, your children are learning through the video games, I think it is much better to send your child to school where they will have more opportunities to learn different subjects and learn them in this group setting, which does help children to behave in class. I think that if you are a homeschooling parent, you will definitely be second guessing yourself more than if you were, a parent that sends their children to school, because you're doing something that most people don't do, and that most people do a lot of judgment, and it's a lot of work to do and don't really reap the rewards right away. So those were all the 15 cons. If you can think of other cons, please let me know in the comments. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I was able to show like the realities of homeschooling and like the tough things that you have to consider before you start homeschooling. There are so many articles and videos out there painting this rosy picture of what homeschooling can be and so on. But you do have to weigh the pros and cons with every big decision you have to make in your life. So that's the end of the video. I apologize for the noise that was happening in the start of the video. And thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.